Welcome. Good afternoon to everyone. We are here back after a summer break from the webinar series of the Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group from the European Microfinance Platform. And we're very happy to have today a very special guest and bringing the topic of climate change adaptation and strategies for microfinance institutions. You know, the structure of this webinar will be, first we will have an introduction of the action group, then we will have the presentation and main topic of this webinar, and afterwards we will have 30 minutes for questions and discussion directly to Olga, and then we will finish by 5 p.m. So we will start. The session today is called How Can Microfinance Improve Climate Change Adaptation? The Experiences of Rwandan Smallholder Farmers and a Research Outlook. We have here today Professor Olga Bioska from the Yunus Center for Social Business and Health from the Glasgow Caledonian University. Welcome, Olga.
Thank you, Natalia. A pleasure.
So let's get started. The European Microfinance Platform Action Group, Green Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance, was launched in February in 2013 in Berlin. And in this last decade, we have been working with over 150 members affiliated from different institutions. Here you have a list of them. And the activities are coordinated by Davide Forcella and by me from EDERA and the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam, and Davide Forcella, now director of the JUST Institute and researcher at CERMI. We conduct different activities. You can visit in the website e-MFP.eu here, and the acronym of the action group. You have access to the Green Index, a tool for assessing the environmental performance of microfinance institutions, information about trainings and workshops, also modules for train the trainers approach, publications, and an online library where you can see different types of materials, ongoing activities, webinars, and so on. And I'll go an overview of what we have. On the Green Index, it has been a tool that was developed by the Action Group, and in last year we have worked on the relaunching of the tool, now being the Green Index 3.0, which is aligned with international activities and as well with the universal standards for social environmental performance management, the Dimension 7. Which is the environmental performance management that was co-developed with SPTF and CERIS. And you can access the tool also in the website and go through it and see how it works. And this tool now has been digitized so that institutions can go through it in very detailed way, going through the indicators, what type of actions can institutions do along the different axes, and it is publicly available and also free of charge for everyone that want to use it for data collection or also for training, especially for consultants around the world. The Green Inclusive and Finance online library, you can enter it also through the website and access over 500 documents related to green microfinance. And to all the researchers, if you don't find your publication, don't hesitate to contact us and we include it also in this database. Our webinar series happens once a month, with a break that we had in holidays, and these sessions are recorded. The videos are uploaded then in our YouTube channel, and we are sharing about best practices in the sector and tackling green microfinance from different angles. You can see in the website like the different topics we have been talking about since 2020-21. We have also the training on green inclusive finance with 7 modules and with very detailed PowerPoint presentations with cases, frameworks, exercises for microfinance institutions and consultants. And with this overview, now, if you are interested further in our activities, we will leave you our email addresses by the end. And with this, we give now the floor to Professor Olga Bioska to discuss about the topic of today: how can microfinance improve climate change adaptation? Olga, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Natalia, not only for the invitation, which has been extremely kind and very timely, because it's just the moment in which we are drafting the report, so feedback is welcome. We're about to finish it very soon, so it'll be soon out. And but also because there is a real need for research to come closer to climate adaptation microfinance, and I think it's a very good space to kind of bring together practitioners, people working microfinance, funders, development institutions, to kind of come together and think about the possibilities of grouping and doing a little bit more research, but also more practice or accompanying innovation with research. So thank you on both counts, and thank you everyone for coming. I see there's quite a bit of audience, so I hope I don't, I hope people are happy after this. There's a long time for discussion later, so and I'm going to try and be brief and when I explain the project to get time later for questions and answers, because that's usually the best part. So the project is about how, or the role that microfinance can play in climate change adaptation, if it has a role, and how we can improve it, how we can optimize it. I am not the principal investigator of the project. So this is Dr. Karen Helwig. She also works in Mary Robinson Center for Climate Justice in Glasgow Caledonian University, but she's a senior lecturer on water and environmental management. So she's a technical person. And I was more focused on microfinance. Also from Glasgow Caledonian, we had Michael and Emanuela, and we worked with the University of Rwanda as well, with Patrick and Liberata. So we were a relatively big multidisciplinary team of co-Is, of co-investigators. I also here need to thank Opportunity International. They've been a fantastic partner throughout. Not only they funded or helped to fund, there was also some internal funding from the Global Challenges Research Funding, GCU, but they funded the projects, they brought the initiative with them, they facilitated access to Ruwego Bank, for researchers to link to microfinance institutions in the field. It's not always easy, so that was very much appreciated. And they helped us in connecting with people who were innovating in the field, and they kind of guided the research and sense checked throughout. So a very, very lovely and much appreciated partner. So, a very brief outline on what we will be discussing today. So our projects, because there's two, our research objectives, I'm going to focus on the ones that are relevant for today. There were many. Where we worked in the Rwandan context, very top-line methods, and then finance conclusions and what we could do in the future in terms of the research outlook. So this is the second project of two projects that have been exploring how microfinance can link to climate adaptation and climate justice. The first one was conducted by a very similar team. I wasn't involved in the first one, but the rest of the team was. So in 2018, 2019, and there it was very much focused on climate justice and how microfinance could be a tool for improving climate justice and climate adaptation for smallholder farmers in Rwanda, but it could also bring further inequalities to an area that was already pretty unequal. So we decided to build up on that with this second project. Please, Natalia. So the aim was basically how microfinance could be better used to support climate change adaptation. So we have lots of climate funds. We know the climate finance is there. We just don't know how to funnel it into the smallholder farmers who are, the frontline people that are fighting climate change. And they are not getting the money. And we thought, microfinance has a role to play there in funneling that money to the people who needed it most. It's just a matter of thinking, which design could work better for everyone and not to increase inequalities, as we were saying. So equal access to these opportunities in terms of improving climate adaptation of smallholder farmers. So we worked in Rwanda, and basically what we did was ask farmers to tell us about how they were adapting to climate change, if they perceived any climate change at all to start with, how they were adapting, and how the loans, if they had a loan, were helping them in this question. If they had a loan, how these loans could be improved to kind of make them work better for them and adapt better to the challenges that climate was posing for them. We did it in the context of Rwanda, as I'm saying. The first project we did was on Rubavu and Uye. This time we focused on 3 different districts. One was Gisagara. It's one of the poorest districts in Rwanda, as you might know, some of you might know. We're talking about 1/3 of the population being extremely poor. But not only that, it's also at risk of droughts, floods, and landslides, highlighted in the National Adaptation Plan for Action in Rwanda. So it combines both. It combines income and socioeconomic vulnerability with climate vulnerability. Then we have Muzanze. Muzanze is above so there are less extremely poor people than in the rest of districts in Rwanda. It's slightly above average in terms of poverty, but it is very unequal. So it's mainly urban, but there are also peri-urban and rural areas that are more isolated and very unequal. So the socioeconomic opportunities are definitely not the same. So we wanted to explore a little bit more of that. And then we have Ngoma, which is around average in terms of vulnerability and poverty, around 22%, I think it is, are extremely poor. And it is also at risk in the drought risk map of the National Adaptation Plan for Action in Rwanda. So they also have that climate vulnerability. I have Kigali. We also worked in Kigali in this project. We conducted 100 surveys and we did 10 qualitative interviews, but it was more about food security. So it wasn't that much about smallholder farmers and the role that loans were playing in climate adaptation. It was more about how the food supply, the food chain supply worked with climate change and what could be improved. Now, some of the agricultural traders that we worked with in Kigali were also producers. So we've taken some of the surveys, the open text in the surveys, and added to the results of this bit of the project. So that's why it's there, but it's not really there because it was a different kind of thing. But we also got some knowledge from them for this project in particular. Very top-line research methods. So this research is in no means representative of the population. I know we have a survey of smallholder farmers and it's a pretty big number, but it's not intended to be representative. We started with this desk research. So we started with the previous project, and the previous project we realized there was so little academic literature on this. And I want to pick this up later on the last slide when we discuss the research outlook. Very little. And it's mostly the same people over and over again. So if you want to talk about climate and microfinance, you just need to go to the gurus that we have. There's 5 or 6 only, and that's it. So very little academic literature. We went to the grey literature. We discussed the policy documents in Rwanda mainly. Then we did the survey with the farmers. Then we did in-depth qualitative interviews with smallholder farmers who had loans and with others who didn't have loans. We did 30 interviews. We also interviewed the loan officers of Rwanda Bank in each of the districts. Then we did something called participatory mapping and transect walks, which is basically getting the community together, or some representatives of the community, to draw, it's what you can see in the picture, to draw their communities. And then they walk you through the community and they tell you, here's where we plant, here's the marshlands, here is our irrigation system, here is where we store the crops. And this gives us a chance to kind of explore further opportunities that the community is not taking up, and also what are the big risks that we can't prevent, that they can adapt for. And then finally, once we had some results, we wanted to sense check with people who were working in the field. And we did some stakeholder interviews to sense check what our findings were. And it was good to hear them say, oh yeah, this resonates with what we're seeing. So that was nice that our results were not completely crazy. But also because we chose them because they knew or they were implementing innovative stuff. They had really innovative programs going on. Some of them were on microfinance, some of them were on digital, some of them were on post-harvesting methods. So very, very different in the sector, but all connected to improving the climate adaptation of smallholder farmers. So this was also really interesting. Then our sample, these are some descriptive statistics from our sample. We chose, that is the usual socio-demographics, we chose the materials of the housing to report and to look at, because, when the houses are from mud or a mixture of wood and mud bricks, they are more vulnerable to landslides, so more climate vulnerable. And then you can see the other measures is pretty much, socioeconomic levels of socioeconomic vulnerability. Now, in terms of who we chose, our sample was purposeful. It was designed to make it easy for us. So the way in which we did it was, Urwego Bank usually was going through cooperatives to give their loans. So the loan officers introduced us to some representatives of the co-ops. It could be farmer cooperatives or savings and credit associations and cooperatives, and they chose the members that were going to be surveyed. Amongst them, we asked them, we didn't want all of them to have a loan, because in the first project, we'd only interviewed people who were using loans. And in the second project, we wanted to know what were the barriers for access. Why were so many people being left out of the loans? Then we also wanted to interview people who weren't in co-ops, because we knew for a fact that there were barriers, particularly of income, that didn't enable all the farmers, and in particular not, for example, young people who didn't have collateral, or those who had lower yields from their lands because they were high-risk lands or for whatever reason. So we knew there were also factors there, but we weren't able to get a lot of them, particularly in Gisagora and Goma. We were more successful in Musanze, and we did get more people that were outside the cooperatives. Thank you, Natalia. So findings, right? So the main thing was, we did find that microfinance was playing a role in climate adaptation for the farmers. They did think it was helping, the loans were helping them prepare for climate change and kind of adapting themselves to what was coming. But Urwego Bank, the loan is designed in a way in which you can only buy, they give you the seeds and they pay the company. So they have, climate proof, very high quality seeds. But that is the loan. So the money in this case is not fungible. It's not like any other microfinance loan in which the money is fungible and can go, to a health need or schooling. No. In this case, it's just they go to the seeds or to the fertilizers, just because it's the way in which the loan is assigned. And I'll come back to this later. And then, there's quotes, but most of the quotes, all of the farmers, nobody said that the loan had affected them negatively. Just say out of the 300 people that we interviewed. And then, but we did explore access barriers to microfinance. I will discuss later, because there were tweaks, right? So it has helped me to adapt to climate change in these ways, but also it could be tweaked in the following ways to help me adapt better or to make it more useful for me. But there were people being left out. There were still the people being left out. And we were thinking, how we can make access equal. This is a loan. So the people we interviewed were not the poorest of the poor in any of the areas. Also, because they needed to have access to cooperatives. Cooperatives usually require upfront initial share fees. So this is, you need to have a lump sum of money that you can put upfront before being a member of the cooperative and before being able of getting a loan through the cooperative, for example. They have membership fees. They have regular monthly payments that are sometimes connected to the way in which they manage insurance, or sometimes connected to the way in which they manage community irrigation systems. But they're not for free. It's not like you become a member, No, they entail income. They entail expenditure or investment, however you want to call it. So we had one of our interviewees, they were saying, well, for now I'm not at the level to afford it. Joining the co-op, I can't afford a weekly contribution and may join and become indecent. So this is not only that, being in a co-op takes money, it also takes respect. So if you finally make it to belong to this cooperative and then you fail to pay your loan, that's a total failure. So that's why many people who were in the cooperative were actually not borrowing from Rwanda Bank. They were not taking the loans. Then in terms of taking the loans within the cooperative, exactly the same thing. So it's the same limit. It's like it's financial insecurity really, and the fact that it's difficult for people to determine, you know, will they restructure my loan if I lose all my harvest? What will happen? Things like that, right? Then there is a lack of education, training, and mentorship, and this was highlighted by a lot of our survey participants, also more in depth by the interviewees. They were saying, you know, that it's important for people to give them advice. They were talking about agronomists coming to see their harvest when they needed them. They were talking about, you know, the need to help them prepare for climate change, knowing more about it. So it was very important. And then a fear and lack of confidence. Some of our respondents were talking about having a poor mindset. Having a poor mindset just meant that these people didn't want to grab the opportunities because they felt like they were going to fail. They didn't have enough confidence in themselves. This particularly affected the people the groups that were more vulnerable. So, you know, the women, the youth who didn't have collateral, so they have more difficulties in access to loans, and the elderly who didn't get as much yield from their lands as other smallholder farmers. So we got to some recommendations for MFIs. Obviously, these are, you know, just from our project, and a lot of them don't depend on the MFIs themselves. A lot of them depend on everyone, you know, public-private partnerships happening, and public programs kind of being more holistic in their approach. So the thing with the cooperatives in Rwanda is that they are the key for development in Rwanda. So if you don't belong to a cooperative, you're out. So the green growth and climate resilience strategy, what they're looking for is sustainable crop intensification. And this is based on land consolidation and also coordinated centralized farming practices. This means that either you're in a cooperative or able to join a cooperative, or you're out of the development plans. Now, most farmers in Rwanda are not in cooperatives. So this, you know, this is tricky. And this is also tricky for microfinance institutions to manage, because what they're looking for is kind of some kind of, you know, moderation of risk. And they do this through the cooperatives. But what farmers are asking for is actually, you know, we want individual loans. We want cash loans. We want to spend the money on agricultural inputs, but the agricultural inputs that we consider are appropriate for what we're planting. One of them was telling us, well, you know, if I wanted the money to get drunk or go away, I would just sell the seeds, right? And I would get the money and I would get drunk and never pay my loan. So in that sense, they were thinking, you know, give us some responsibility as well. We know how to manage our money with farmers. We've been doing this for a long time. Then there was another big challenge with, what if you need something bigger than, you know, seeds or fertilizers? Or what if you need some post-harvesting storage? What if you need some transport to get it to Kigali to sell it? What if you need better irrigation systems? These are beyond what microfinance can do, but equally you can plan a way in which microfinance loans, maybe collective, maybe individual, but building up in each of the lands of each of the smallholder farmers, could play a role. Then loans for environmental protection were discussed. We know that there's people in the field trying to do tree loans, because we know that tree planting prevents landslides and is you know, in the line of sustainable land management. So exciting, but again, very hard for MFIs to actually implement in practice. And then operationally, as usual, this is farming loans. So agricultural loans, the speed of loan disbursement is crucial. But the farmers were telling us, listen, the seasons are changing because of climate change. So we know we need to plant sooner than we did last year. And, you know, the seasons keep changing. So they also need to, you know, Rwanda Bank or the microfinance institution needs to adapt to these different requirements that we're having as a consequence of the climate changing as well. An important thing also was, they were telling us, you know, we've had a climate disaster, and Rwanda has been super flexible with repayment schedules. So we technically restructured the loans, and it's been fine. And they were really happy with that. But I think also telling them in advance would reduce kind of access problems, because some people say, well, you know, if I lose all my harvest, I'm not going to be able to pay. Well, you know, MFIs are usually sensible, and they will design this restructuring plan. But this is part of training people and helping people, giving them advice on what a loan is for and how it works, really. emergency funds are crucial. I pretty much think that everyone agrees here. So there's no other way. Then something that we discovered as was really important, and I'm a big admirer of non-financial services in microfinance. Those who know me will know, and also of extension services in agriculture. So I'm a big fan, but I think almost everyone, we included a question in this, almost everyone said more training was welcome, and these were the actual farmers. But then we spoke with the stakeholders, and the stakeholders were telling us, well, yeah, but this is not only for the clients, right? We need to build capacity within the MFIs. Everyone from, the executive committee to the loan officers needs to know the importance of climate adaptation, of being sustainable, of taking this seriously, really. And this was one of the biggest suggestions. Insurance is complicated, right? We all know this. We found that there was no access for some because they lived in high-risk areas of this national action plan that I'm talking about in Rwanda. So they are excluded. But also our farmers were talking about, we've discovered that our loan is insured and we can repay, but what about a harvest? Can we insure our harvest? And we didn't find anyone who was doing that in Rwanda yet. So that's another idea for somebody who wants to pioneer in that. Or maybe there are, and then in that case, please tell me, let me know. Guarantees for youth and women, for those groups who are more vulnerable, and this would need to be a public-private partnership for sure, market linkages, and then finally partnerships, right? Partnerships of any kind for financial inclusion. There are many in the field, so there are people working fintechs, digital, mobile phone companies, even solar energy companies. They have very easy, sophisticated and cheap ways of giving loans. So, sharing that technology. Also graduation programs for NGOs that helps better understand who could be included, maybe with an individual loan, right? And our last slide, which is about the future research outlook. So I started this talk by saying there's so little academic research on this. Partly because this is a new topic, but partly because working with universities is hard, right? I don't know how many academics I have in the audience, but we're slow. We are very rigorous. We want always to do big projects. So a project like the one that I've talked about, which is very qualitative in nature, but also has given us a lot of information of what's happening in the field, right? But it's kind of qualitative. We want to do big randomized control trials. We want to be able to match populations. And that takes a lot of money, a lot of time. We're very slow in producing any outputs. So, microfinance institutions, funders need to bear with us, and that's hard. But I think that if, there are ways of kind of solving these issues, and I think understanding the role of each stakeholder is very important. So MicroSafe was also, consultancy firm was also involved in this project, and we all had like different, very kind of stipulated roles from the beginning, and I think that helped a lot. I think, of course, microfinance and climate adaptation needs to be explored further. We need to know how to better get these climate funds to the people that need it most. And I think, as I said, this research kind of proves that there is a way that microfinance can play a role. But we also need to better understand who will be left behind and how we can compensate for that, because it wouldn't be climate justice if we were leaving people behind. Another thing that surprised me is like how much innovation there is in the area. There's lots of things happening in the field, but things that are not well communicated online, things that you just find out snowballing from one to the other. And if there's innovation in the field, there's also plenty of research opportunities. So I think it's important to do these connections between, people who are innovating in the field and the researchers and the consultants kind of can support and help people better understand the fundings. So yeah, that's me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Olga. Was very punctual and incredibly. So we have now 30 minutes for discussion. And here we have the chat and also the Q&A where people can leave the questions, or if you want, you can also raise your hand to turn on your microphone and be heard. And as well as I would like to emphasize from the beginning, the action group. So the European Microfinance Platform holds different action groups. One of them is research back and forth or research back to practice. And there we can also have some synergies between the Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group and the other one. So if you have, as practitioners, questions that you would like to research, you can approach the action groups. We have here some questions from Peace MFI Tessera. I will be reading the questions and then Olga, you take them. Dear colleagues, apologies for signing a bit later. No problem. He's connecting from rural area. Tessera says, in addition to fear, engaging in these topics, I do also have a view that microfinance companies too might have a mission drift. And for this reason of sustainability, or in brackets, profitability, probably microfinance institutions might shift towards better off and to customers that may demand for bigger loans. Probably this might need having a research. Olga, will you agree? I think
definitely. Thank you, Tessera, for your question. I completely agree. I think there might be mission drift going on. There might also be the complexities of being able to operationally, in an operationally sustainable way, fund this this very complex issue, because agricultural finance has always been complicated. In microfinance and agriculture, I mean, the Ohio school that started studying microfinance started studying agricultural microfinance. I mean, it's been a complex issue since the start, and it's very risky. And climate change is making it even more risky. So it's not only about mission drift. I think it's also about trying to be sustainable and trying to, hang on in there and be able to keep loans. So it's probably both. Probably both. You're on mute, Natalia, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was saying that this is an issue also for many countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. So thank you, Tessera, for bringing this topic to the discussion. Now we have a comment from John Gusowski regarding partnerships and larger, longer investment needs by producers to increase climate resiliency. I suggest that SACCOs and microfinance institutions partner with banks and employ a value chain finance approach. I've been implemented this approach with Equity Bank Rwanda and Bank of Rwanda, I think it's the Development Bank of Rwanda recently. I don't think either microfinance institutions or banks can finance the agricultural sector properly on their own. They need each other, along with roping in the non-financial assistance resources available. Have you looked at this during your work in Rwanda?
Thank you, John. Again, completely agree. I think, you've seen it in the field as well. There's no way the agricultural sector can be funded only by microfinance institutions, only by banks. Not even, I don't know. I think there is a need for real partnerships. And which some of them are happening already, like the one you mentioned, and Wego Bank is obviously linked as well to bank, and some of them are happening already. But the thing is, for us, what we're worried about is we need to promote partnerships, and that's a reality because no one is going to be able to fund agriculture on their own, in particular climate adaptation, which is it goes just a couple of steps farther. But also the fact that we need to, that some people are being left behind because they are not target, because they're not within a cooperative, because, so, even if we need a big, we were thinking not even a value chain finance approach, top down, but also bottom up. So get those tiny NGOs that have been working with 50 women in a village and have started doing a village and saving, a small lending and savings group, but they know that they don't default, and they know, bring them up, graduate them. So I think it comes both ways. I think it comes top down, but also bottom up, so that, you know, everyone is kind of engaged with it. But yes, definitely, I completely agree. I think there is no way. Also, I mean, this is what we require is a systemic change here, right? So we're talking about systemic changes. So everyone in the system needs to be involved. And I think in particular, development finance institutions and multilaterals and international finance institutions have a huge role to play, because they are the ones who can channel to the banks, and then the banks can channel to the MFIs, and then the MFIs can channel to the NGOs or to the SACCOs or to the farmer co-ops or whoever, or individual lending to smallholder farmers, and take that risk, or you know, or government helping them out with that. Some of the climate funds could be used as guarantees. So yes, no, completely agree. But I think we should take it one step farther.
Yes. So from Barbara, rate maker, have you seen a decrease of agriculture portfolio in microfinance institutions due to climate change?
Hello, Barbara. That's a hard one. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think the agriculture portfolio is very big, and I think that at least the Rwanda Bank, which is what we know better, and some of the farmer co-ops who have also different types of loans for that are not directly connected to Rwanda. What we are finding is that they are continually tweaking products, continually improving them or changing them, because so they are innovating in different ways, because they cannot make them sustainable. They're not operationally sustainable. Sometimes because they've decided to work with a financial inclusion body that gives them some grants, and then it's free money and it's easy to give those products, because you can give subsidized interest rates, you can accept more vulnerable groups, but then suddenly these grants go away, and then you need to tweak the product again. So I don't know about the agricultural portfolio as such as a consequence of climate change, but what I do know is like they are constantly thinking about better ways to improve the products, and that's why this project was funded. Really, it was like, what are the people in the field think that we could do better?
And I think it's an excellent question for master thesis, doctoral thesis, comparing different cases. I know that this has been some case, or this question has happened in some cases in Ethiopia. Now the question is who is going to cover that market of people that are not yet anymore with access to microfinance institutions. From Patrick Reichert, I have to run, but wanted to say thank you for your presentation and a very interesting project. Some message to you, Olga.
Thank you, Patrick. Good to see you here. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. From Leslie Cosgrove, it appears that mentoring of cooperatives and partnerships, inclusive of the rural-urban value chain network, are crucial to supporting the small farmer, no matter where they are in the world. What is your thought on this regard?
Completely agree again. I completely agree. I think the role of cooperatives in Rwanda is quite tricky, because they are using them in all of their development programs. So I think in Latin America, even though you have co-ops and most of agricultural credit goes through them, not all of it does. There's a lot more of individual credit, individual loans for agriculture, for farmers, or at least that's what I've seen. Whilst in Rwanda, because we're going towards this centralized farming, sustainable way, the cooperatives are maybe playing a bigger role than they should. Because remember that not all farmers, in fact, most farmers are not enrolled into our cooperative. So a part of me is like, yes, we should, engage with cooperatives and give them more training and mentoring. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think we should also look for another routes that are not cooperatives. So give more agency to NGOs, to community groups, to people who are working on indigenous, roscas, maybe, that trust each other, and then build on that, get that social collateral in that way. I think not to leave everyone excluded. Of course, this is what I'm talking about is a dream, because it's incredibly expensive for an MFI to do, and we all know that. But we also need to find ways in which. So one of the things we were proposing, for example, is like, yes, offer trainings in a co-op, and to people who are in the co-op, even if they are not borrowers, but also in the community center in the village, right? So just get this, get them the cooperative storage space, for example, which is usually where things happen, and just put everyone in the community who wants to listen, and it will get, the training will get also to the other farmers. And maybe not only engage them into a loan, but also engage them into, an irrigation system that benefits the whole community, things like that.
Yes, there are some stakeholders that are working on or designing programs for civil society, for civil organizations, such as the Jeff, now upcoming, and also pushing or working very hard to bring climate change resiliency programs for microfinance institutions. So let's see what's the development in this area. Let's see now from Sunil Parayuli, microfinance, over-indebtedness and debt trap on underdevelopment countries like Nepal. It's a serious problem in the region. And I think the comment from Sunil is, in those cases, what could be advised on how to deal with climate change adaptation for microfinance institutions? What do you think, Olga?
This is a tough question. I don't know, but I can tell you a story. I can tell you a personal story about how these research projects started. So I work on microfinance. Karin, who's the PI, the principal investigator, she's, environmental management. She's very on water, so irrigation systems and even drinking water, right? And Michael is also from he's also on the more technical side, more on the environmental side. And Ella is more on the climate justice, but I was the only one who had worked with microfinance before, and in terms of seeing it work in practice. And they thought, exactly what you're saying. What we are going to create if we give microfinance to all the smallholder farmers in Rwanda is an incredible debt trap. And we're going to make them very miserable, and climate justice is not going to be justice, because this is not a holistic cross-cutting tool to improve climate adaptation or anything else, really. And you know what? I agree with them in the sense that microfinance is not for everyone. It cannot be used with the most vulnerable groups. They don't have repayment capacity. They don't have capital to get the yields to pay those interest rates, right? So I completely agree with you in the sense that we need to be very careful who the loans go to. These are not grants, they're loans, and that's important. But equally, there are, for example, in Rwanda, we found that there are many graduation programs, and the graduation programs build up on these people. Well, they're worldwide. I think BRAC started them, but they've gone around, and it's just like they get very vulnerable groups of people and they kind of build up on them. And what we were thinking is, MFIs can maybe link to those NGOs that are working with graduation programs. Governments are working with graduation programs, right? So link up with them, and they could be the ones offering the loans. And then the risk is mitigated in some part, in a bit. And also, you can more easily link with training opportunities and technical assistance, extension services. So that could be an option. But I completely agree, we need to be very, very open and honest about what microfinance can and cannot do. And, it cannot improve climate adaptation for people who are not able to afford a loan. That's for sure. So yeah, good point.
Yeah. Now we have the question from Sylvia about JASPEC. Nice to see you here, Sylvia. What opportunities and challenges do you see for public-private partnerships in making relevant services more affordable and to reach low-income and most vulnerable populations with relevant financial services for climate resilience?
Like Natalia would say, I think this is a great question for further research. I think there's already things being done in the field in Rwanda. The low-income and most vulnerable population, it kind of relates to what's happening before. I think you can partner with public programs, and that's for sure. And most of the extension agricultural offices are actually publicly paid. They're not paid by the MFI or the cooperative, really. They're paid by the government in one of the multiple programs to support agriculture they have. So that is working in practice, and it works fine. But there is also another trick here, which is private companies are able to increase the yield for farmers. So, you know, they can get better storage solutions, they can get better post-harvesting systems. We were talking to Kungwe people who are doing fantastically in, you know, getting the corn clean for selling, and high quality corn, improving the chain, you know, the value chain of the product. So it goes both ways. I think we not only need to look, so when you talk about public-private partnerships, I usually, before this project, actually, I would, you know, private partnership for me would usually be a bank or a microfinance institution that is private, but, you know, a bank of some sort, or, you know, but now I'm thinking more in terms of who is innovating in the field. What are they doing? You know, the digital providers, for example, what are they doing? Can we use this software? Can we use it in a way that can improve access, make it cheaper? Because if you make loans cheaper, then interest rate is cheaper and the loans are more affordable. So that's, you know, that's a very easy way. That, I mean, digital also has other risks. We don't know that, but hey. Yeah, so that would be, Natalia, I'm sure you can add to that because you have a lot of experience.
I remember like a program that there was in Colombia with Banco de las Oportunidades that was some 15 years ago, where they had, the objective was to boost microfinance and especially to increase the outreach of financial services. So in this public-private partnership, in the sense that there is a public program, Banco de las Oportunidades, used a partnership with private banks and also national banks in order to increase or to enable corresponsales bancarios. How do you call that? Like, not like little shops, enabling them to also offer financial services in the most rural village. So even if a microfinance institution wasn't there, then it was possible still to reach this population through this technology or entity with just mobile data or even just telephone and basic SMS. So an opportunity is in the sense of how to increase outreach, and the challenges is how to bring solutions that are targeting climate change, you know, whether the services will remain in I need a loan or need a loan only for my productive activity or for, as you said, not the next fertilizer or the next seeds, but how can I receive more information? What are the climate risks? Will a rainy season come, and can you give me that information from the shop? Can this be connected with an insurance, or can it be also that if you have the shop and Coca-Cola gets there and Marlboro and all these companies that sell their products all over the world, can also they be value chains or parallel value chains for other type of technologies that might be needed for people so that they can stay and have that their quality of life is not affected. So
yeah, I've remembered of I'm going to be to the point, but I've remembered of an anecdote. This was ages ago, but there was this program with Costa Rica coffee growers. Most of you will know it because it was, you know, Walmart was running out of they wanted to start doing fair trade, but the certification, they had no producers, no suppliers that could actually meet the fair trade coffee maker certification thing. So they decided to partner with the co-ops of coffee growers in Costa Rica, and they trained them. They give them the technical assistance for them to get the certification in fair trade, which, mind you, to me, it's kind of similar to why don't you give them technical assistance to manage properly climate change and adapt to the risks that are coming? And then, you know, if you can get a high quality product, then better, because you can improve the value chain and you can, you know, sell in better paid places. I'm not saying that Walmart paid them very well, but hey, you know, at least in that sense, I think there's always a way of finding a public-private partnership that works, but it's hard. It's hard to make it happen. It's hard to figure it out. Implementation is always the hardest thing, right?
I hope I see here participants from the research action group, so I hope these questions will be noted. We will for sure share them. So we have the next question. Can microfinance institutions help to invest in ecosystem restoration and thus increase resilience, where payback guarantees can be based on carbon credits or payments for environmental services?
This question, I'm really sorry, but I think it's a bit beyond me. I think I hope it could. I very much wish it could. I'm just not sure if this is implementable, i.e. doable at MFI scale. I see it too big. But I don't know. Natalia, you might have a different, I'm sorry, I'm disappointed.
Well, I'm having problems with the invest. Now it's more help micro. So if there is the demand from clients in restoring an ecosystem, as it will be then ecotourism, or there will be a yield in this area that will be a crop, then now we can call that ecosystem restoration and increasing climate resiliency. But I haven't seen a program that it combines carbon credits with ecosystem restoration with microfinance institutions. But we will have this in our radar if we find this. I know
It's a good suggestion.
There are some programs for restoring mangroves. And this is not individual loans, so this also has to be with a type of it's a public public investment, but it's not that just one person or individual loans or a group loan will be investing in this type of activity. But we will, I think this is also one question.
A good question.
Further research.
Yeah, I wish it could. I mean, that would be amazing.
I see examples from David here. Okay, we have the question from Max. It seems that Max Niño Sarasuo, welcome. It seems that microfinance is not making a significant contribution to climate change adaptation, as according to your research, the products and operation models are very much the same as a traditional lending model. In this respect, how much fintech can make the contribution that microfinance is not achieving? For example, seasonal products that are driven insurance. What is needed in Rwanda to make this to happen?
Thank you, Max. A very good question, as always. It's always pointing out. Thank you. So yeah, really interesting. We found, so it looks like a lot of people, from a survey, a lot of people had access to a smartphone, but the smartphone was not theirs. So these poses in terms of fintech challenges, in terms of, for example, simply managing the loan digitally, you need to have very safe ways of protecting the data and kind of the smartphone not saving any of the keys of anybody or the data from anyone. So there are challenges related to that. So people have access to the technology, they can access smartphones, but their phones are not theirs, they're shared. And that poses problems for the MFI to start with, because they are not, they don't rely 100% on, how much trust can you put on the representative of our cooperative, right? Maybe they could access all of the accounts of people, I don't know. So that was a challenge that we found. Then we talked to one of the stakeholders who is in a mobile payment network, and you were like, of course, this can be easily solved by doing this and that, and it escapes me how. So there are ways to kind of go around it, and they exist. And this is why probably partnering with people who are doing digital, either those that are giving solar loans, energy companies are great in Africa giving loans, and it's like, how are you doing it? So there's ways of doing it, and I think partnerships play a very important role. Again, definitely data-driven insurance, that's also crucial. But beyond that, and even a lot easier is, weather forecast. These farmers were telling us we cannot access weather forecast. We don't know if there's going to be a huge storm, and we cannot prepare it in the next week. let alone during the season. It's like in the next week. So, weather forecasting technology was found to be really helpful for them, and also risk mitigating in a way. I don't know how much you can adapt to a really big storm, but you can adapt to your planting activities to, the next 2-3 weeks in which what the weather forecast is going to be. Also, again, the thing that to make operations cheaper, MFIs rely a lot on cooperatives and cooperative representatives. And another thing we found is that information was not flowing very fast. In some of them, it wasn't flowing at all. So, technology can play that bit in which information can flow a lot easier. And this can be done through text messages. It doesn't need to be a smartphone. It can be, the mobile network, really. Yeah. So yes, definitely. I think there are opportunities for the financial technology to improve the cost of delivering and to improve the innovation in the products, as you say, because it's pretty much more of the same that we're seeing. But also it entails risks, and the risks need to be analyzed very carefully because some of them are quite serious. So yeah, that would be my reply. But yeah, you're very right. Good question.
Mm-hmm. From Benjamin Wolf, as a farmer of an SME, the investment in climate adoption, renewable energy, etc., often comes with long-term advantages only. Do you have any good practice to create short-term incentives or win-win situations to strengthen the motivation to invest now?
We don't. But one of the things that was very much discussed in Rwanda was tree planting and terracing. Partly because this is tree planting is not very immediate, but terracing can improve the yield very fast of your harvest. And it's very important to protect the soil, the land. So in that sense, that was easy, but still then it was difficult to find MFIs funding that because it's slightly more expensive than a loan would be. And then, so that's one bit. The other bit would be even more long-term tree planting. So there were lots of farmers that knew about the advantages of tree, particularly in Gisagara, where we had the flooding and the landslides. They knew about tree planting, and they knew that planting, for example, avocado trees would stop the landslides, and they really wanted to do it. But obviously the schedules of the MFIs won't allow for that. But we know that there's actors in the field, some of the stakeholders we were talking to, they are piloting already projects of funding tree planting, for example, for sustainable and climate adaptation purposes. So obviously the repayment schedules are different. They also are planning insurance. What if the trees die? Because obviously the risk is longer. The trees have 20 years to die, or I don't know when they start preventing landslides, because I'm not very technical, but at least 10 years, I don't know. So in a way, there's things being done, but I think we need to try harder. I think we need to go a little bit beyond that. So yeah, if anyone has any examples, please put them in the chat, because it'd be really interesting to know.
There has been the practice of giving initial grants or subsidies for decreasing the size of decreasing the amount of the loan. The question is if in the long term, or depending if the program lasts too long, or if it's, or if there will be the chance that development cooperation or charities will come and also give the systems for free, and then the market will be destroyed. But in some cases where there is a special technology, there is a special grant, limited only the number of these 100 clients, the first ones that will acquire, then there is like an incentive to invest now and win-win, having a pilot, seeing the response, testing a technology, and also the supplier and value chain, and then see how the program goes. We have reached the hour, but we have just one comment more, or I think three more from, I think, yeah, like three more. So Olga, let's give it a try, at least 5 more minutes. I think, especially from the set, I think there is a situation. He says we have this model in Ethiopia, and what do you think about the consequences of the model? I will go first, Sarah, with the comment that you left in the chat. So in Ethiopia, Peace MFI has partnership with 30 private technology providers. I think that's the largest number of suppliers that I have seen in the microfinance institutions for its solar loan to the rural areas. Peace also used pay-as-you-go. It's an innovation. We have discussed this at the past SAM. However, the technology has a cost. And in order not to pass the price to the poor clients, the microfinance institution covers the cost of the pay-as-you-go technology. If we add on the price of technology, the cost might be very big for rural customers. It was true if using technology reduces costs, rather, the reality is not like that. So what is your view regarding this? What could be a good balance?
Finding someone who pays the cost for you, right? So I think you're right. It's just right. It's, you know, the MFI takes on a huge risk, not only in pay-go systems, but also, you know, any digital platform that they implement. It's a huge risk, and it's costly. And there are other risks related that can be super expensive in terms even of brand and image. So I think this could be a good, it could be where maybe a big DFI or international finance institution can come and kind of cover the cost of that. Not for one MFI, maybe for a bunch of them, create an infrastructure, digital infrastructure in a country. I think that, I mean, to me, that's the only way, because I agree, they're costly for MFIs. And
yeah. And also this is how do you say, like a jalón de orejas, an appeal to those policymakers that design these programs. No, this is part of a program. So no, we are using pay-as-you-go system for our clean and affordable lighting loan project, which is part of different stakeholders are supporting the microfinance institution. However, thinking who will bear these costs, and in the long term, even if the program goes or organizations will change, how will be the integration of these processes within the institution. I've seen also cases, for instance, in Yemen with international development cooperation programs, providing grants for solar home systems, and then microfinance institutions delivering the systems, but then the cost that it entails to manage the value chain, the inventory, the accountability of the systems, the space. These are costs that in time and in resources, space will add, and it's a burden for the institution. So again, it's about program design that thinks as well on this, on the needs and capabilities of the institutions. And the last one from Mahmoud Soliman: microfinance stands better chance to support small farm holders in Africa to adapt quickly to climate change. What is critical for this to happen is dedicated funding with reasonable pricing for microfinance. How can your institution liaise with the UN Climate Fund to design cheaper funding for microfinance for this?
My institution cannot liaise with UN Climate Fund, but we can lobby. We can lobby for that to happen. So this is why we need big partnerships, and we need rigorous research as well to come with projects, with innovative projects that are happening in the field, because it's a way to prove to the UN Climate Fund that this is very much needed, and that there are ways of making it cheaper. There are ways of supporting microfinance for climate adaptation. It's just that they might be too expensive for a microfinance institution on their own. DFIs know this already, and the UN knows this too, right? So it's about proving it to them. So that's why partnering with universities, partnering with bodies that are, rigorous and that can lobby in front of this organization is important. Accompanying innovations with, impact evaluations, whatever you want to call them. But
and communicating, like this webinar and future ones that we will have at the Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group. Olga, thank you very much for your contribution, for your presentation, and all the answers and discussion that we had today.
Thank you very much. It is fantastic. Thank you for the invitation, but also thank you to the fantastic audience. It's been brilliant to be here, really exciting and interesting questions. So thanks all for coming, for being there, and for, your posts in the chat and everything else. Very dynamic. Thank you.
Thank you, participants, for attending, coming today to this webinar. I hope that you also explore the links that have been shared by Davide Forcella, co-head of the Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group. And if you are interested to join, write to Joanna Afonso and contact us also through the website. And with this, we end and close today our webinar, and we will notify you once it is uploaded in YouTube. Thank you very much and have a nice afternoon. Goodbye. Thanks to all.